The footage of Alex Pretti's killing looks conclusive. But we don't yet know for sure why a federal agent unloaded 10 bullets into his back as he was forced to the ground. Pretti's death has yet to be investigated, so, ordered a judge, all the evidence must be preserved. Minnesotans attended vigils and pondered the extraordinary implication that the White House might cover it up, thus revealing the existential split tearing America apart. Several Republican grandees have now joined widespread calls for a proper probe, but many here say they already know what they saw with their own eyes, an execution.
He was just walking and they just surrounded and he slipped on the ice and they started tussling with him, and then they hit him in the head with a canister, and then he started tussling with them, and then they shot him. They just killed him right there. He was unarmed.
Ice out of Minnesota! Ice out of Minnesota! Ice out of...
This isn't just a local issue, it goes to the heart of Trump's America.
Really wish that people would wake up and see what's happening.
White, black, brown, it doesn't matter. Everyone's being hassled, everyone's being harassed, and our rights are just being trampled on. These goons are going around without any respect for the Constitution or our rights. And people are being killed, they're being assassinated in our streets. It needs to stop.
The Minnesota governor has now called in his state National Guard, which will no doubt be seen by the White House as a provocation. And a federal judge today will decide if the deployment of 3,000 ICE and border agents violates Minnesota's state sovereignty. State rights, the kind of issue that begat the American Civil War, no less.
If we don't stop this behavior here, it will only expand, and it won't be good for anyone in our country.
I've got a question for all of you. What side do you want to be on? The side of an all-powerful federal government that can kill, injure, menace, and kidnap its citizens off the streets? Or on the side of a nurse at the VA hospital who died bearing witness to such government?
That is not, needless to say, how Donald Trump sees it. The immigration crackdown is precisely what he promised. Despite protests in many parts of the country, Republican towns in the South, he says, are getting on just fine, claiming that thousands of criminals have been successfully deported. The problem, Trump says, is liberals and their sanctuary cities, which have created dangerous circumstances for everyone involved. Tragically, 2 American citizens have lost their lives as a result of this Democrat-ensued chaos. Vice President J.D. Vance said Minnesota was refusing to cooperate with immigration enforcement, and the deaths were the direct consequence of far-left agitators working with local authorities. And Trump's Border Patrol commander blaming the victims themselves for making bad choices.
Individuals make poor choices, poor decisions, come into a law enforcement situation, an active law enforcement situation, conspire to come into that situation. Whether that's based on ideology, we don't know. That'll be in the investigation.
Minnesota, make it clear! Minnesota!
Ideology is the key here. Liberals fear chaos on the streets is a MAGA plot to get America used to martial law, to prepare the country for cancelled elections, for an authoritarian takeover. But MAGA paint Renee Good, who was shot dead by ICE agents a few weeks ago, and Alex Pretti in particular, as would-be assassins and pawns of far-left radicals. So, what exactly is it to be an American in 2026? This footage is doing the rounds of nurse Alex Pretti honoring a US war veteran a year ago.
Today we remember that freedom is not free. We have to work at it, nurture it, protect it, and even sacrifice for it.
In the hours after his killing, the White House claimed he'd drawn a gun. The footage clearly shows he was holding a phone. Pretti was a licensed gun owner. Now, even the reliably conservative NRA is worried about the signal this sends to other Americans and their sacred right to bear arms and free speech. What could be more American than that? Minneapolis is exposing the schism between MAGA and liberals like never before. I'm joined now by Greg Swenson from Republicans Overseas UK. He's currently in Chicago, but spends a lot of time here in London. When you look at what's going on in Minneapolis and the relationship breakdown with Washington and the White House, what on earth is going through your mind?
Yeah, it's really tragic, first of all, because so much of this is self-inflicted by the leadership in Minnesota and specifically in Minneapolis. But I do think
you think it's self-inflicted on the Minneapolis side, not the Trump side?
Yes, yes, because there's a little bit of context here, perspective. But the ICE has been very active for the last year. I mean, they were active in the Biden and Obama years too, but particularly in the first year of Trump 2.0. They had 30,000 deportations in Texas. They had 10 to 20,000 in Florida. Minnesota's had 2,000. So it's the scale of the deportations or the detentions in other states is significantly greater than Minnesota. The difference is there was cooperation with those other states.
Aren't we actually talking about what appears to be, when we look at the footage, an execution that the White House initially said was caused by Mr. Pretti raising a weapon, which he did not raise?
Yeah, I think I'm very cautious about jumping to conclusions and making statements right out of the gates. And I think that was the mistake, is that they didn't take some time to, either have an investigation or at least gather more information. And so it looks like this was a tragic mistake. Cooler heads should prevail here. And what's happened is that these are not peaceful protests. These are organized, violent mob violence that's really being driven.
Hang on a second.
Sure,
Renee Good appeared to be driving carefully away from the agents. Appeared to be.
No, the first video
Alex Pretti clearly didn't raise a weapon.
There was mistakes made on both sides. Don't get me wrong. These are the tragic things that happen when you have organized mob violence. It's being pushed by really radical organizations in Minnesota, and of course encouraged by the governor and the mayor. And Kami, just to recall that in 2020, the same thing happened in Minneapolis, or a very similar thing. Okay, and it had nothing to do with ICE. It had nothing to do with immigration, and the city was burning. And it was the same mayor, same governor.
Several Republican senators and grandees have said, actually, the White House called this wrong. You spoke too soon. There needs to be a big and a full and a thorough investigation into everything that's gone wrong.
Definitely.
There are weaknesses on the Republican and the MAGA side too, especially now you have the NRA coming out and saying, hold on a minute. We are talking here about the rights of American citizens to free speech and to bear arms potentially being trampled on.
Sure, no, they won't be, first of all. But I do, I understand the NRA is, they are a one-issue organization, so they're going to always, be on the side of the Second Amendment. But Kami, I don't disagree. There are disagreements within the Republican Party. One concern is that the ICE agents now are. It's front page news. It's just too visible. It's important to get, to arrest the, felons and child predators and human traffickers. That has to be done. As soon as that's done, get out of town. And I wish that they were getting cooperation from local enforcement, because the local enforcement could be doing that and we wouldn't need ICE. But unfortunately, the sanctuary cities and sanctuary states are refusing to enforce federal law.
A lot of people in Minnesota and indeed other cities say that many communities are just living in terrible fear, that there are lots of law-abiding people. They can't even get out of their homes and go about their business because they fear, they fear the dragnet.
Right. I think that's quite an exaggeration, or maybe that fear
that's what
is
people
coming
say.
from, maybe it's because 93% of the media coverage has been anti-ICE. I would like to think if you're anti-ICE, maybe 50% of the media coverage, but 93% has been anti-ICE. So, and then you're hearing it from the governor and the mayor, and they're encouraging it. I also think the Democrats really want the president to invoke the Insurrection Act, which I think would be a mistake politically. He has every right to do it, and I think they want him to do it because that would be a great thing to run on in the midterm. So I hope the president dials down a lot of the rhetoric, and ICE just slowly leaves Minnesota. They have other work to do. There's plenty of work to do.
You worry that some of the noises coming from inside the White House are not helping to resolve this.
Yeah, because a fiery speech from Tom Homan or Kristi Noem is going to be on that 93% of the media. It's going to be portrayed as very much anti-ICE. So I think everything needs to be dialed down.
And Greg, final words. If you had a word in President Trump's ear, Kristi Noem's ear, inside MAGA to tamp this down, what would you be saying to them?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would say keep up the great work, but also let's do it a little bit more delicately. Now, unfortunately, they don't have that option in Minnesota. I think they've done it in Memphis, Tennessee, and Dallas, Texas, where they're getting cooperation on the ground. But they're facing rioters in Minnesota. So maybe the idea is maybe just get the worst of the worst and get out.
Greg Svensson, Republicans Overseas UK, speaking to us from Chicago. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Kenny.